It's a funny thing about happiness, isn't it? You see these global rankings, and you'd sort of assume the wealthiest nations, the ones with all the comforts, they'd be right at the top.
Right.
But then you look at the World Happiness Report, and year after year, it's places like Finland, Denmark leading the pack. The U.S. is often, well, surprisingly lower. And some countries like Japan, even further down.
Mm.
It really makes you think, especially if, maybe you've achieved a certain level of success yourself, but you still feel like that deep, lasting happiness is just a bit out of reach sometimes.
That's a really great point, and it really gets to the heart of what we're exploring today. This often unexpected link between our external situation and our, well, internal sense of well-being.
Yeah.
So we're diving deep into the science of happiness. Specifically, we're looking at the research of Columbia University professor Elizabeth Dunn. Her work was featured in those NHK Happiness Studies lectures, and there's a helpful summary video out there and our mission really is to pull out the key findings for you, give you some actionable insights without, getting bogged down in super dense academic stuff.
Exactly. We want to get those aha moments from Dunn's work, like you said, as presented in that video summary, sort of a shortcut to understanding what really helps build a happier life.
Okay, so the first concept that really jumped out at me was this idea of the hedonic treadmill. What exactly is that?
The hedonic treadmill. Yeah, it's pretty fundamental when we talk about happiness science. Basically, it explains why those big life changes could be winning in the lottery, could be, a major setback, why they often don't have the lasting impact on our happiness that we think they will.
Right, like we adapt.
Exactly. Adaptation is key. We have this remarkable ability to get used to things.
Yeah, the video mentioned that classic study, I think it was Northwestern University back in the 70s, with the lottery winners and accident victims.
Right. And the really surprising thing was after, like a year or two, both groups kind of went back to their baseline happiness levels.
Pretty much. That huge initial high from the lottery win, it fades. And while the accident victims obviously faced immense challenges, their long-term happiness didn't necessarily stay, drastically lower forever. They adapted too.
Wow.
We just get used to our new normal, whatever it happens to be. And the video also mentions how this plays out in more, let's say, common situations, like getting married or even experiencing the loss of someone close.
Yeah.
These are huge, profoundly impactful events, obviously. But typically within about 2 years or so, people's happiness levels tend to return to where they were before the event.
So, okay, this raises a massive question then. If the big major events don't really dictate our long-term happiness, what does?
That is the big question, isn't it? And Dunn's research points towards something much more, well, consistent, and actually something more within our control. It's the accumulation of small daily joys.
Small daily joys. I like that. She uses this analogy, right, like a happiness bucket that kind of gets emptied each day.
Exactly. It needs refilling. Yesterday's fantastic day doesn't automatically carry over and guarantee happiness today. You need those fresh inputs.
Okay, so what are these small everyday actions then? The things that keep the bucket full?
Well, interestingly, it's generally not about, extravagant treats or huge milestones. Dunn's work, as shown in the video, really zeroes in on 3 key ingredients for building that daily happiness. First one, nurturing human connection. Second is practicing acts of kindness. And the third is focusing on being present right here in the moment.
All right, let's unpack connection first. The video stressed how even really brief positive interactions with other people during the day can give our happiness a real lift.
Absolutely. Think about those little moments, like you said earlier. A quick friendly word with the person making your coffee, chatting for a second with the cashier, just saying hello to a neighbor as you pass.
Yeah, they seem so small, almost insignificant sometimes.
But they add up. They contribute to our overall sense of well-being. The video even mentioned that studies looking at the happiest, top 10% of people find they consistently have strong social connections.
And not just deep friendships.
No, not just close friends and family. It also includes acquaintances, people you see regularly, even just casual contacts.
Okay, but what about people who are more introverted? Does this mean they have to force themselves to be super sociable all the time?
That's a really important point. And no, it's not about forcing it. Even for introverts, these brief positive interactions are still beneficial. It seems to be more about the quality and the consistency of these small connections rather than just the sheer number of people you talk to.
Okay, that makes sense. It's the accessibility, I guess. It's not like you need to plan a big party or have a 3-hour heart-to-heart. It's just these tiny acknowledgments that remind us we're, connected.
Precisely.
And the next ingredient you mentioned, kindness. That also seems surprisingly powerful. How does being kind actually make us happier?
It's quite remarkable, actually. When we engage in acts of kindness towards others, it has this tangible, positive effect on our own happiness. The video gives loads of examples. Volunteering, offering help, just expressing gratitude, even small courtesies like letting someone merge in traffic or giving up your seat.
It's that feeling you get afterwards, isn't it? That little boost. The video shared that study, Sonja
Lubomirsky, yeah.
where students who consciously did like 5 acts of kindness in one day reported feeling noticeably happier.
Exactly, and it underlines that it's not always about grand gestures. It's often these consistent, small expressions of goodwill that seem to, move the needle on our own happiness.
And the video also mentioned appreciating what we have, right? That gratitude piece.
Yes, absolutely. That feeling of gratitude really seems to amplify the positive effects, both of giving kindness and receiving it. It kind of makes you pause and think, doesn't it? How often do you, listening right now, consciously take a moment to appreciate the kindness you receive or the chances you have to be kind?
Good question. Okay, so connection, kindness. The third ingredient was presence, focusing on the moment.
Right. And this one feels especially relevant today with all the distractions we have.
Totally.
The video explained that when we become truly absorbed in what we're doing, could be work, could be a hobby, even just eating a meal without scrolling, we tend to feel happier.
It used that example, which I think a lot of people can relate to, of being totally engrossed in something, maybe like playing a video game.
Yeah. Or reading a good book or gardening, whatever it is for you.
And how frustrating it is when that concentration gets broken, you get pulled out of it.
Exactly. And what's striking is how much modern technology, especially our smartphones, often works against our ability to be present.
Oh, definitely. The video went right there, didn't it? Talking about the impact of phones, the constant pings, the notifications, that almost compulsive habit of checking them.
All those things pull us out of the moment.
Mm.
And they can really chip away at our potential for happiness in that moment.
The book the video summarized even suggested like actively limiting smartphone use as a strategy for more happiness, which, let's be honest, is easier said than done for a lot of us.
It is a challenge. But the practical ideas make sense. Things like turning off non-essential notifications, maybe designating phone-free times or zones, just being more mindful about why we're reaching for the phone.
Yeah, intentionally creating space for focused attention.
Yeah.
Okay, so connection, kindness, presence. Got it. Now, the video shifted gears a bit to talk about money and happiness.
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting. Dunn's research highlights a pretty significant difference in the happiness we get from spending money on stuff, material possessions, versus spending it on experiences.
Okay.
The findings consistently point toward investing in experiences, things like travel, maybe a nice meal out with friends, going to a concert or a play, bringing more lasting happiness than buying the latest gadget or, designer clothes.
That really rings true, doesn't it? The video made the point that experiences are less prone to regret and that whole social comparison trap.
Exactly. You buy a new phone and 6 months later, there's a newer, better one. Your neighbor gets a fancier car. There's always that upward comparison.
Right. But the memories from that amazing trip you took or that hilarious night out, those are kind of yours alone. They become part of your story.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the video noted that even experiences that weren't perfect at the time, the flight got delayed, it rained the whole time, often they turn into the best stories later on.
Huh. So true. You don't usually tell stories about your old washing machine.
Not usually, no. And people generally enjoy hearing about others' experiences more than their latest purchase, too. It makes you reflect, maybe, on your own spending habits. Where does your money tend to go? Could shifting a bit more towards creating experiences potentially boost your long-term happiness?
Good food for thought. The video also talked about the happiness we get from giving money, spending it on others. How does that fit in?
Yeah, it's quite insightful, the progression the video described. As kids, naturally, we get joy from receiving. Then as we get older, become self-sufficient, there's satisfaction in providing for ourselves.
Sure.
But Dunn's research suggests we often tap into an even deeper level of happiness through the act of giving to others. Could be small gifts, treating a friend to lunch, donating to a cause you believe in.
It connects back to that kindness thing, maybe.
It does, and also taps into this feeling of abundance, perhaps, and seeing the positive impact you can have on someone else. It feels good.
It really does. Okay. And then there was the idea of using money for rewards, for treats, but there was a big catch, right? It needs to be occasional.
That's the key word, occasional. The power of those treats really lies in their infrequency. If something becomes an everyday thing, we adapt.
Back to the treadmill.
Back to the treadmill. That University of Michigan study mentioned in the video is a great example. It found no significant long-term happiness difference between people driving basic cars and those driving luxury cars. Yeah, because the daily luxury just becomes the new normal. You get used to the heated seats, the fancy stereo, the initial thrill wears off, and your appreciation diminishes.
It used that example of like limited time menu items at fast food places being more exciting.
Exactly. Because they're scarce. They're not always available.
Yeah.
That scarcity actually amplifies our enjoyment when we do get them. So the takeaway is really about savoring those occasional indulgences, practicing moderation, rather than making luxury routine.
Makes sense. Okay, shifting focus again. Work. The video spent some time on the connection between our jobs and our overall happiness. Which, I mean, given how much of our waking lives we spend working.
It's hugely important, absolutely. The video highlighted that feeling a sense of fulfillment of meaning in our work is a crucial piece of the happiness puzzle.
And what's the key to that, according to Dunn's research?
It often boils down to feeling like you're making a meaningful contribution or like you're helping others in some way. And that's regardless of the specific job title or industry.
Okay, but what if someone feels like their work isn't that significant, like they're just a small cog in a big machine?
That's a really common feeling, and the video addressed it directly. It pointed out the negative impact of feeling useless or like a burden, and even how that can connect to serious mental health issues.
Yeah, that was quite sobering.
But then it offered this really helpful perspective shift, which is, if you're being paid for your work, chances are you are providing value to someone, somewhere. Your work is enabling something else to happen.
Right. Someone finds it valuable enough to pay you for it.
Exactly. And the parable of the bricklayers the video used illustrates this beautifully. You have 3 bricklayers doing the exact same task. One says, I'm laying bricks. The second says, I'm building a wall.
And the third?
The third says, I'm building a magnificent cathedral where people will come to find joy and inspiration. Same job, vastly different sense of purpose.
Wow, that's powerful. It's about finding that cathedral in what you do, however small the bricks might seem, seeing how it connects to a larger whole.
Precisely. Even seemingly mundane tasks contribute. It's about finding that meaning.
But crucially, the video also warned against, going too far the other way, getting so wrapped up in a meaningful career that you burn out. It stressed the importance of balance.
Yes, that's a critical counterpoint. Finding meaning in work is vital, but it shouldn't come at the expense of everything else that contributes to happiness. We absolutely need to make time for leisure, for hobbies, for just relaxing, and especially for nurturing those relationships with friends and family.
Because happiness doesn't only come from work.
Not at all. It comes from all those sources we talked about: connections, new experiences, kindness, presence, those occasional rewards.
The video even referenced Bronnie Ware's work, interviewing people near the end of their lives, and that very common regret, I wish I hadn't worked so hard.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? Meaningful work is great, it's important. But if we neglect the other parts of our lives, the relationships, the experiences, just the downtime, our overall happiness ultimately suffers.
So it's about finding that equilibrium. Feeling purpose at work, but not letting it crowd out everything else.
Exactly. That balance is key.
Okay. So to kind of wrap things up, Elizabeth Dunn's research, as distilled in that Susie video, gives us some really practical and, I think, encouraging insights. It feels like it's less about chasing these huge, elusive moments of peak happiness,
Right.
and much more about the consistent, conscious effort we put into the small, everyday things.
What's really striking is how all these different pieces, connection, kindness, presence, how we use our money, how we approach work, they all kind of weave together. They're interconnected in creating a more, fulfilling life overall.
Yeah, it really reinforces that idea that happiness isn't some destination you finally arrive at. It's more like an ongoing practice, something you cultivate day by day.
Daily cultivation.
So the key takeaways seem to be, don't bank on big events for lasting joy. Build it daily with small actions. Prioritize connecting with people. Practice kindness. Try to be present more often.
Spend on experiences, not just stuff. And consider spending on others too.
Right. And savor those occasional treats. Don't let them become routine. Find meaning in your work, definitely, but keep that balance. Don't let it take over everything.
And threaded through all of that is this fundamental theme of human connection and interaction that keeps coming back.
It really does. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Considering all these insights, what's maybe one small step towards connection or kindness or just being more present that you could maybe take today?
Yeah, what stands out is how actionable this all feels. It's not just abstract theory. It's about making small, conscious choices in our daily lives, cultivating happiness from the inside out, you could say.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the science of happiness. We really hope these insights from Elizabeth Dunn's research give you some valuable perspective and maybe a few practical steps you can try out for a happier life.